Well, it's Bipolar Awareness Day on Sunday, and the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, SADAG, is running a series of workshops on this. Bipolar disorder is a physical illness marked by extreme changes in mood, energy and behavior, and that's why doctors classify it as a mood disorder. To tell us more, I'm joined in studio by Samantha Smirin, who is a person living with bipolar and has also written a memoir called Life Interrupted, and this, of course, entitled A Bipolar Memoir. Good to have you in studio. Thank you very, very much, Samantha, for your time.
Thanks, Leanne.
Okay, so let's talk to your story, because there's nothing more powerful than hearing an example of somebody's story to perhaps trigger something in you to say, hang on a second, I recognize that. What happened to you? You were 18 years old, and that was the time that you were diagnosed as bipolar.
Yes, I was 18 years old. I was living in France and went to London for a Christmas holiday. And during that trip, something changed in me. My perception changed, my energy changed. I stopped sleeping, I stopped eating, I changed my clothing. It was almost like an awakening, a kind of reorientation of perception. And life just slowly started to unravel. I entered a state of hypomania, which is a state prior to mania. And before I knew it, I was manic. And that was an experience of running around London and being in the tubes and really a mind in disintegration.
Yeah. What triggers it? I mean, is it something that perhaps the signs were there all along that needed that trigger? Or was it something that just hit you out of the blue?
The etiology of bipolar is a little bit unknown. Some doctors cite a genetic predisposition. Otherwise, it can be some type of severe trauma in childhood, such as sexual assault. In my case, there was no identification of the etiology, so it was just something that arrived when I turned 18.
Yeah. You know, when we try and get a definition of bipolar, I know it's quite an intricate thing. So how do you define it? What does it really stand for, and what are the behavioral patterns of somebody who is bipolar?
Well, it certainly is, as you said, it's a mood disorder. So it's identified as extreme mood changes, fluctuations. So there's this state of euphoria when manic, where, you know, for myself, I don't really call it euphoric. I find it more dysphoric, because it's really a disintegrating space to be in. But it's kind of, you're above the world, and you're very powerful and kind of in control of life. And then you dip quite quickly into depression, deep depression, dark, nowhere, helpless, hopeless. So this kind of oscillation of highs and lows.
From one end to the next end.
Exactly.
Do you know when you're in that high that something's not right? Or do you feel, like you say, you are kind of indispensable, you're fine?
Not really. Unfortunately, by the time you're ill, you don't have the insight. And in fact, the lead up is such that it's quite enticing to have great energy and, you know, kind of enthusiasm for life. That, no, unfortunately not.
Yeah. So it takes somebody else to recognize that there's a problem, because you yourself will never figure that out.
Certainly. It takes a loved one, or, you know, obviously a psychiatrist. But usually in my case, I've been lucky enough to have people around me that care for me and have recognized that I'm ill and have taken action. So
you went in and out of different institutions, and I mean, you explain your first experience was when you had this mental breakdown. I'm swept away for the first time. There are many more to come. Times of disempowerment, of confusion as to why this is happening to me. Times when never to be seen again strangers, untrustworthy family, disloyal friends and deadly doctors snatch away my freedom and make decisions that will reverberate through my life. What are some of those decisions? What sort of happens in your life to get you to this point where you seem stable now?
I am certainly stable, but I'm only stable because I've done a lot of self-reflection indicated in my memoir, but also because of my acceptance of medication.
Yeah.
I was in denial for most of my life, becoming non-compliant, taking substances. I used to smoke a lot of marijuana, which was a precursor of psychosis. And because I was in denial and playing around with my meds, I was unable to accept my diagnosis. It's a very difficult diagnosis to accept. Mental health illness is highly stigmatized throughout society, and people are not compassionate. In fact, that's why I am here as a mental health advocate to encourage society to take a sensitive view, a compassionate view of people living with bipolar.
And accept it, because, but I'm sure you can concede that since the 80s and 90s, a lot has improved and people have become a lot more educated and accepting of it, or maybe through your experience, not really.
I think so. I mean, I think the conversation is opening up. I think if we look at the 80s where we were faced with the HIV kind of, denial, and now there's kind of open discourse around HIV and AIDS and the idea of living positively with HIV, I think we are hopefully headed in a similar direction around the acceptance and understanding of bipolar and other mental health illnesses.
Yeah, mental health illness is a range of issues. It really is, and people get amazed when you look at the numbers of people that actually do suffer from some form of mental illness, and the majority of us, almost to a certain extent, and they try and explain it away. But it's difficult to explain away because it is something that's in you. It perhaps is a chemical imbalance. It is something that needs to be treated. It's never going to just go away. You need to work at it. And I mean, what is the message to people that are perhaps too scared of medication? They're too scared to go and get the help, too scared to admit to someone that there is a problem.
I would say to the viewer that life is very precious. And an illness like bipolar will completely disrupt and interfere with your ability to live your life to its fullest.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to make careful disclosure to their loved ones, get support, and really invest in themselves by accepting medication and that intervention to secure their health.
Yeah, and stay on it, because that's when things start going wrong. Am I correct? As if you sort of start feeling you're okay and you think, no, well, I'm back to normal now.
It's not just a question of medication. There's a whole lot of other stuff that feeds into it in terms of your psychological well-being, your nutrition, your exercising, really the kind of extended idea, yes, of health. But certainly medication underscores your health.
Yeah. One of the fallacies is that this is a white person's illness, that this doesn't affect the black community. I mean, and that is a fallacy, because I don't think this knows any boundaries.
Bipolar has no discrimination. It affects all human beings. There are just different ways and orientations of looking at mental health illness, and there are more traditional ways of looking at it, and there are more Western allopathic ways of looking at it. But certainly it affects everyone.
Yeah. So just finally, I know that there's a lot of workshops that are going to be taking place through SADAG. Where are they taking place? What is the sort of the pattern that this is going to work in?
The South African Depression and Anxiety Group runs a large amount of they run helplines and groups and sessions, so they're best contacted themselves.
Okay.
That's on their website, SADAG.
Excellent. So contact them, but I know that this Sunday they'll be having a series of workshops on bipolar disorder. On Sunday it is a Bipolar Awareness Day, and if you would like to read more about bipolar and a life that has gone through it and is certainly looking very good at this point in time, go and get this book, Samantha Smirin, the author of detailing her experience living with bipolar. Samantha, thank you for your bravery and thank you for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you, Leanne.
Right, let's take a break. We've got one more interview for you after this. Stay tuned.